I addressed it Dear Precious Angel, and we've called him Precious Angel ever since.
It takes a special human being to come forward to be tested, to undergo counseling, have a medical exam history taken, and to say yes.
That is a billion-dollar question. Preserving your memories. There are about 10 people now working on my archives. When I come back, they'll pull me out of the frosty freeze and they'll thaw me out. I've got it so set up that my memories will be there.
From the boundaries of the universe to the depth of your soul, embark on a journey through the unknown and unexplained. Hello and welcome, this is Patrick McNee. Today, we'll show you the latest technological development designed to end our quest for immortality. But right now, let's join a very special celebration, as children with life-threatening illnesses are given a real and rare gift of hope. We were invited to a party, but this wasn't just an ordinary festivity, rather the celebration of life. Kelsey Arnold is a 7-year-old girl who has braved more in her young life than most of us have experienced in a lifetime.
March 29th of 1993, she was diagnosed with leukemia.
They told us that the only hope she had was to have a bone marrow transplant.
Finding a possible bone marrow match within the immediate family circle is the ultimate goal.
We weren't fortunate enough to have a match. There's 6 HLA types. Kelsey's 3 of mine and 3 of my wife's, and my son didn't match either.
The only other solution was to harvest and transplant some of Kelsey's own bone marrow. But a year and 3 months later, Kelsey relapsed, a devastating experience for her and her family.
A bone marrow transplant is often a last resort for many patients. They've tried other types of treatments, other types of therapies, and this is their last chance of finding a cure. For many patients, if they don't receive a transplant, they will die.
We knew we had to get another transplant, and this time it couldn't be done the same way. We had to find a donor. So they went to the National Donor Pool, and on Christmas Eve last year, they called us and said they'd found a match.
Kelsey's transplant was a tremendous success, and her second chance of life was due to a complete stranger.
The donor and recipient do not know each other's names or where they live or what they're about until 1 year after the transplant.
Sometimes a patient will need a second transplant. The year allows for the anonymity of the donor. They can make a decision whether they want to donate again in private.
The Arnolds had to wait a year before they could meet their hero, but at least they were allowed to write to each other.
The very first time I wrote to him was the day she received his marrow. I didn't know how to start the letter. Because I didn't know his name, I didn't know him. I addressed it Dear Precious Angel, and we've called him Precious Angel ever since. And from him receiving that first card, he nicknamed her Little Angel, and today the angels met.
And now, without further ado, I'd like you to meet Ed and Karen Schlest.
It was after hearing a heartbreaking story of a leukemia sufferer and how difficult it is to get a matching donor that Ed Celeste decided to enter the donor program. It takes a special human being to come forward to be tested, to undergo counseling, have a medical exam history taken, and to say yes.
I consider finding a donor a miracle in itself. Just the statistics and the odds are so far against you to find somebody who has that close of a match.
For all of us to give a little bit, we can make those miracles happen. You know, without him, Kelsey wouldn't be here. So she's a miracle. It's a miracle.
For Ed and his wife Karen, meeting Kelsey was all the more special because they don't have children of their own.
We're getting a little lost for words. It's a bit overwhelming. This is the first we met. We've been communicating anonymously by letters.
Kelsey's sudden fondness for Chinese food led to some strange speculation.
She has some of my marrow and some of my blood now, I guess she has some of my likes and dislikes.
I've done this for 4 years, and this is the first time I've ever seen the donor and the recipient, and I'll tell you, it just puts everything in perspective. I'm glad that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. It's a miracle. It's an absolute miracle.
Miracles like these are only possible with foundations like the National Marrow Program and the dedication of people like Dr. Mitchell Caro and his devoted medical team. The road to recovery is still long for Kelsey. But now she's at least able to go home and do the things ordinary kids do.
I like to play with my dog at home.
Before Kelsey's relapse, she was on her school swimming team and she broke the record for her age group.
When I relapsed and came back into the hospital, somebody broke my record, and my mom said to me one day, Kelsey's coming back to break the record back.
And the man who's made this all possible stands as a brave man today.
Words can't express it. He has given my child another chance at life. He's given us another year to make memories, to experience everyday experiences that, a normal family or a normal child.
He's truly another gift from God besides my daughter.
That is the billion-dollar question. Preserving your memories. There are about 10 people now working on my archives. When I come back, they'll pull me out of the frosty freeze and they'll thaw me out. I've got it so set up that my memories will be there.
The world of science fiction and fantasy is filled with tales of people returning from the grave. Our story is not so much a tale about Frankenstein or mad scientists, but about people who have made a decision that upon death, they wish to undergo cryonic suspension with the hope of one day being revived.
Does the soul exist? Is there such a thing as reincarnation? Or when we die, do we simply cease to exist?
Whether a viable solution or a desperate hope, cryonics offers a possible reprieve from death. The first question, what is cryonics?
Cryonics means taking people who have been labeled as dead by today's medical criteria and placing them in a circumstance where they won't change very further in liquid nitrogen at 320 below zero, holding them there until they can be looked at by doctors of the future who might, using different criteria, decide they're alive and repairable. The whole point of cryonics is not love of being frozen, it's love of staying alive.
People from all walks of life have expressed an interest in cryonics. Among the more famous is the noted 1960s activist and proponent of cyberculture, Dr. Timothy Leary.
Timothy Leary first came to prominence in the early 1960s as a professor at Harvard who advocated the use of hallucinogenic drugs as a means to self-enlightenment. Leary was also involved in the civil rights and the peace movement.
Timothy, why at this point in your life are you considering cryonics? Why are we sitting here talking today?
Because I found out in January that I had a cancer, which is spreading through my body. So my days and nights and weeks and years are numbered. Cryonic is the only one right now. It's very primitive. It's extremely experimental. I don't think I will be right back, but I'm going to do everything in my power using the science that's available to study this issue so that in the future, maybe my grandchildren will have this option.
There are at least two options that Alcor offers. One is whole body suspension, where the entire body is frozen. That's a minimum of $120,000, most of which is actually invested so that the patient can be cared for an indefinite period of time. We also have another option called neurosuspension, where only the person's head is frozen, or very occasionally the person's brain. And the reasoning behind this is who we are is in our brain.
Now, are you planning on undergoing full body suspension?
I don't know. I probably will have a brain neural. I've left my body kind of drift. I look like Gandhi now. The full body, it costs a lot more, and I don't want to be in a position where my grandchildren are not having money to go to school because they get granddad is up there with his whole body being pickled. I mean, that's not dignified, so I think I'll probably go with the brain.
Dr. Timothy Leary has always led an unconventional life, and his views on dying are no less controversial.
I'm not afraid of dying. Matter of fact, I'm looking forward because there's a process. When your heart stops and your brain stops, there's a period of 2 to 15 minutes. This is the unknown territory. What happens when your brain is up there with 120 billion neurons slapping around without the bothering of the body and all that? The Buddhists and the Hindus have said for centuries the dying process is something that should be studied and to decide how and when.
While cryonics offers us hope, the scientific feasibility is not so simple.
We don't want to have people that look like us in the future. We want to have us there. We do know already that we can freeze sperm and corneas and heart valves and skin and many other human organs, including frozen embryos, fertilized embryos for in vitro fertilization. And these work just fine at that temperature. So at least there's a proof of principle there. We don't know yet how memories are formed in the brain. So we cannot go in and freeze a brain, thought, and examine it and see if the memories are still there. Even in very elementary animals, we can't do that. That should be solved in the next 10 years, though. Scientists are getting very close to understanding that. And then we can really begin to make progress because we can know where the identity of that person is.
That is the billion-dollar question. You see, no one's ever talked about before preserving your memories. I have over 1,000 cardboard cartons, which have every piece of paper that has any personal reference to me. There are about 10 people now working on my archives. These are my memories. And once they get on the computer, you see, then you can order them and you can punch up what happened in July 4th. When I come back, it's going to be fascinating. They're going to have to, it's a very delicate, you can imagine. They'll put me out of the frosty freeze and they'll thaw me out. And I'll probably be looking at the 3 doctors with clipboards, right? I hope not, but I've got it so set up that my memories will be there and I can retrace my life. It's going to be on a computer.
So do you think you'll retain your same personality?
My personality is I am an adventurous philosopher. I'm a dissonant philosopher. It's an ancient tradition, Socrates all the way up. I hope that I will maintain the attitude of curiosity and a trust and belief in human nature, and above all, humanism, to empower the individual, to do it yourself with your friends. I hope I keep that. And I'll have instruction. If I come back a Republican, turn me back off, okay? Plug in. Turn on, tune in, and plug in or something.
Eric Drexler, in his book Engines of Creation, discusses how future development of nanotechnology can reverse the severe cellular damage caused by low-temperature freezing.
We think that a lot of repair in the future may be done by using nanotechnology, which is the next step smaller than microtechnology. It means building machines at molecular size, which could actually go inside cells and do repairs, much like the machines inside our cells already do, but these will be programmed to do more things.
Okay, will you show me the procedure? If I came in here, what would happen to me?
As soon as the patient has been declared dead, they're placed inside this mobile rescue cart. We pack them in ice, add water, start circulating it to cool the patient as quickly as possible. We also add a number of different medications to protect the brain, and to circulate these medications, we use this heart-lung resuscitator, which is basically a mechanical CPR machine, and this keeps the blood flowing and gets the medications to the brain. Once we're back here in Scottsdale with the patient, we place the patient on the operating table, still packed in ice, we want to keep it very cold, and we do heart bypass surgery to connect the patient's circulatory system to this set of pumps. This is a bypass machine just like used in regular hospitals. The object here is to replace up to 70% of the water in the patient's body with a chemical called glycerol, same thing as glycerin. The nice thing about glycerol is when it freezes, it does not expand like water does, and it tends not to form crystals. It vitrifies like window glass. So this protects the patient's cells from most of the freezing damage that would otherwise occur. In this tank, the patient will be cooled down to the temperature of dry ice. The patient, wrapped in plastic, will be lowered into this oil. This oil is made of silicone. It will be pre-cooled to about 10 degrees below freezing. Once the patient is at dry ice temperature, minus 110, we pull the patient out, wrap them in a sleeping bag for padding, and then strap them into this aluminum pod for physical protection. They're strapped here, head down, and then the top is placed on. The pod is lifted up in the air with a hoist, and we slide it into a dewar, a large stainless steel container for the cool down to minus 320 Fahrenheit in liquid nitrogen.
Is there a soul? And does cryonics validate or reject the idea of reincarnation or a divine afterlife?
Now, I don't belong to any religion. I would call myself a high-tech Buddhist or a scientific Buddhist. The Buddhists knew that if you turn off your mind, then you're open to all sorts of visions which come from your brain. I found Buddhism and Confucianism to be very hopeful and humanistic. Now, when they talk about reincarnation, they're talking about reincarnation of the soul. And I'm talking about reincarnation of the brain. I think that most of the very sophisticated Buddhists would approve of what I'm doing. And if they don't, well, I'm not going to worry about it.
Beyond the question of scientific feasibility, cryonics also raises philosophical questions, such as, will society continue to advance? And will future generations want to revive a backward people into an already overpopulated planet?
No, I don't want to come back. Here I am. Oh, God, the world is filled with unwanted children. The last thing we want are more old people spending all these resources when there are hundreds of millions of infants being born, unwanted, unplanned, unprepared for. It raises basic questions about human dignity and the human soul and spirit.
How would you adapt to a society where your knowledge and skills are basically outdated when you come out of this sleep state?
I love that question. I've been stuck with the situation where my ideas are ahead. And the most dangerous thing to be is 10 or 20 years ahead of your time. 40 years, they look like, oh yeah, but see, Galileo was busted, and the history of people with really good ideas, after they're dead, really. So now, I hope to come back totally bewildered. What a thrill. The last thing in the world I want is to go back to a world like this.
I will have to learn new skills, learn a lot of knowledge about the science of the future, but that doesn't concern me.
The people that run the cryonics institutes, they're our kind of people. They're very intelligent, they're imaginative, they're utopian. I think it's the most exciting area of science. And it's so simple. When the time comes, I'll just press the button, stopping all of the life preservation techniques, and it's going to be quite painless. I don't want pain, I don't want helplessness, I don't want to die with indignity. I've tried to live a life of activity, and I don't want to have wheeled around having my diapers changed. Bottom line there.
Obviously, we can't guarantee the future. We can't guarantee this is going to work, but you don't start a project assuming it's going to fail. This might work. The difference between might and won't is infinite.
This is a gamble. I personally would say the chances are 1,000 to 1 or 10,000 to 1 against my coming back. I'm not worried about that. I want to live and die in the best fashion possible. I don't care at all. I'm doing my best to be an explorer for the human race. You learn from my mistakes, and that's what science is all about. I'll probably goof up, and they'll forget to put the plug in. It's all right. People will learn. Plug in. Turn on, tune in, and plug in or something. Ha, ha, ha. I'm sorry about that.
Okay, one last thing. If you really do come back, is there anything you're really anxious to do again?
Well, basic to me now, and I think to most human beings, are family. And I'm a great grandfather. I was a grandfather, now I'm a great grandfather. I want to come back and see my children. What I'm looking forward to.
That's our show for today. Before closing, a final note. With all the grief and turmoil in our world so graphically exploited, it is indeed a pleasure to recognize and applaud the kindnesses of humanity that still prevail.
It was in the intensive care unit at UCLA where I had an out-of-body experience. And there at the foot of my bed were 4 people that I knew.
Our investigation into cults gave us a rare glimpse into a world of dark and frightening secrets.
From the boundaries of the universe to the depth of your soul, embark on a journey through the unknown and unexplained. Hello and welcome. This is Patrick McNee. Today, we'll look at the power behind a growing Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde phenomena as we investigate cults. But let's start by reliving one man's extraordinary experience outside his physical body. Let's watch.
It was me walking towards my family and saying, "What are you looking at? What's the matter? Why are you crying?" And I turned around and looked and I said, "Wow, that's me. Wow." It looked pitiful to me. It looked saddening. It looked bad.
In 1979, actor Eric Estrada was living the Hollywood dream, a dream which began shortly after he was cast in Chips, a television series about the adventures of the California Highway Patrol. But it was because of this very dream that in an instant, Eric's world became a living nightmare. It began with the filming of a routine action scene.
It was a shot where me and Larry Wilcox, who was my partner on the show, and we're running out of a building, we jump on the bikes, and we're chasing a car.
But then something went terribly wrong. And instead of being seated on top of his motorcycle, Eric suddenly found the 1,000-pound vehicle on top of him.
The first one to my side was Larry Wilcox.
It was obviously pretty serious, but I didn't know. And having been in the Marine Corps and Vietnam and all that stuff, I was pretty used to that kind of situation.
And he kept me from going into shock because he kept me in the present. And he was quite helpful because at that time, my lungs were punctured. And I had a big gash, but there was no blood coming out of my body. It was all internal bleeding, and it was filling up my lungs. So I had to really suck air on my own, and then the pain to boot.
And then the ambulance came, and I rode with him in the ambulance to the hospital, and then it got really serious. I'll never forget it. I could see in his eyes death, and I've seen it, you know, I know what it looks like. There's a fear in their eyes that's beyond normal fear. It's almost like the spirit's leaving the body.
Though the finality of death loomed over him, Eric's will to live kept him conscious while doctors raced to save his life.
They lay me down on a slab. They start cutting the clothes away, the boots, the uniform off me.
I recall the priest coming in and giving him his last rites. They had anticipated that he had ruptured his aorta in his heart, so, you know, it could be in a matter of seconds. And they had to do either open heart surgery immediately or he would be dead. But then some miracle happened. He didn't have to have open heart surgery.
But Eric's other conditions, including collapsed lungs, numerous broken ribs, and several unspecified internal injuries, required that he be transferred to a different hospital.
So then I was helicoptered from there to UCLA by the Sheriff's Department. And it was in the intensive care unit at UCLA where I had an out-of-body experience.
The term out-of-body experience has become quite popular of late, but it is not a new phenomenon. One of the earliest uses of the expression dates back to the days of the Bible, when the Apostle Paul wrote, "And I knew such a man, whether in the body or out of the body I cannot tell, God knoweth." The belief in a soul or spirit existing within the confines of our physical bodies is common in cultures throughout the world. But less common is the notion that this aspect of our being is in fact a conscious entity which is able to wholly separate itself from the physical body and venture out on its own. In Burma, the withdrawal of this life force is likened to that of a butterfly leaving a cocoon. The Azande tribe in Africa believe the separation of body and soul occurs every single night as one sleeps. It has been reported that the separation can be 2 inches or 2,000 miles or more. But there are limits to what one's spirit entity can do. It cannot be seen by those in the physical realm. Eric explains.
I was lying in bed in intensive care, and there at the foot of my bed were 4 people that I knew. A friend of mine from New York, my dad, who was in a wheelchair, he's always been in a wheelchair, my mother, and a friend of the family who was dating my mother. And they were looking at me, but they had really sad faces on, and my mother was crying. So I got out of the bed and walked towards them. And I was maybe 3-4 inches away, 5 inches away from them. And they didn't see me. They just kept looking through me. They were looking past me. And I turned around and I saw what they were looking at.
Eric's spirit was no longer in his body. Shocked at the eerie sight, Eric instinctually understood that the only way he would ever leave the intensive care unit alive was by re-entering his physical self.
I think what it did for me at the moment was I didn't like what I saw. I didn't like seeing myself like that. And I didn't want to be there. So I said, I'm getting out of here. And the next morning, I was taken out of intensive care.
Reflecting back on the incident, Eric feels he had help in making the decision to return to his body.
I think maybe I was grabbed by my guardian angel and was given a choice if I wanted to stay, not get back in the body. But I choose to get out of there.
Larry also feels Eric's recovery was divinely achieved.
I would have to say that it was a miracle and that an intervening force greater than human beings, and in my lay opinion, that's God.
Eric has never again had another out-of-body experience. But the one incident was enough to give him a new perspective on celestial beings and the afterlife.
I hope that when, after my death, that I get to be a guardian angel to some youngster. Oh yeah, I believe in guardian angels.
And there are millions of others like Eric who have experienced journeys outside the housing we call the human body. Could you be one of them? These supernatural sojourns have often been compared to hyper-real dreams. Is it possible, as the Azandi tribe believe, that each night our nocturnal imaginings are in fact ethereal, out-of-body adventures? It's something to sleep on.
Our investigation into cults gave us a rare glimpse into a world of dark and frightening secrets.
Most of us have at one time or another been mesmerized by something, temporarily. But in the case of cults, followers have let a select few exercise an almost uncanny control over them and devoutly attribute to their leader extraordinary, even supernatural powers. What is it about these men that set them apart? Is it a misuse of divine power that they actually possess? Or is it pure madness? And even more important, what is it about the followers? Everyday people from all walks of life, like you and me.
I first met Jennifer in 1985, and we went to the same high school together. She's great. She's one of the most popular people I've ever known, and people adored her and were really drawn to her. Her involvement with the Branch Davidians started with her sister Kathy. David Koresh would call Jennifer at home and could begin to make her promises of, we are a group that can help you spiritually, and you can find some of the answers through us.
April 19, 1992, only months later in Waco, Texas, a scene of horror and tragedy was carried live to the world. In a lethal blaze, more than 80 lives were lost, including 21 children under the age of 14.
Jennifer and her sister Kathy and Kathy's 14-month-old baby daughter, Chanel, all died in Waco.
The inner sanctum of the compound at Mount Carmel was finally exposed, and so was the bizarre life Koresh and his followers had led. Koresh claimed to be the second Messiah, sent before God's judgment upon the world to save mankind. And even after his death, Koresh's message lingers.
I have since met with some of the surviving members of the Branch Davidians who are still living in Waco and who very much still believe that David Koresh is coming back and are living their lives around that fact.
One such devout follower of Koresh is deadly serious in her conviction.
So when David comes back, and he is coming back, he will give the 7 seals. See, we were given the 7 seals.
Our investigation into cults gave us a rare glimpse into a world of dark and frightening secrets. But it's the leaders of these cults who intrigue us the most. People who possess an almost inexplicable power to seduce and conquer disciples by the thousands.
Hitler was by far one of the most successful cult leaders in that it became a totally social phenomenon that took over an entire country. He certainly had public appeal, and the kind of charisma that drew masses to him, and he certainly was manipulative and cunning and was able to get people to do horrendous things.
In the 1970s, the People's Temple in Redwood Valley was a tight-knit community, and their infamous leader, Jim Jones, appeared to be the answer to all their prayers. At his command, they packed their bags, took their children, and followed him to what seemed to be the promised land. But hometown families of the followers began to raise concern. It was all too good to be true. Congressman Leo Ryan decided to visit Jonestown and see for himself.
He had heard reports of all kinds of bizarre things going on, and I believe that among those things were reports of suicide drills.
In his efforts to help a few of Jones's followers escape Jonestown, Congressman Ryan was killed by Jones's snipers. Not long after that, a frantic Jim Jones forced his followers to carry out a grisly mass suicide pact.
913 people total died between those who committed suicide and those who were murdered.
I've been laying up here paying for your sins for 2,000 years.
Charles Manson was taking advantage of sort of the hippie flavor of the times and sort of doing, free love, free sex, dancing around in the woods naked, doing drugs. At the same time, he was able to gather these people around him and get them to accept his crazed version of the world and his reality, which came to be called Helter Skelter. And again, we had people who carried out extremely violent acts at his command.
And in David Koresh's case, he started out, you know, just being this man who had a little bit of truth that he wanted to share with people and was very sincere in that. And then pretty soon he was this prophet. And then as time went on, he began to claim he was the Lamb of God. And at the time of his death, he was absolutely claiming to be the Lamb of God. And his followers died believing that he was the Lamb of God.
Experts estimate that there are approximately 2,500 to 3,000 cults operating in the United States today. So most of those cults have leaders, and there are millions of people at any given time in the United States involved in what we call destructive cults that are being controlled by leaders that have the type of power that Jim Jones and Charles Manson and David Koresh had over their followers.
They talk about cults and they say their cults are dangerous, but all you ever actually see in the news is governments killing cults. You don't see cults killing anybody.
Amo Bishop Roden lives on the compound in Waco today. Although not a follower of David Koresh, she is a devoted Branch Davidian.
And I don't think when you come out and live in a religious community in a beautiful place out in the country, and you're away from crime, that you suddenly are overcome with this suicidal impulse. It hasn't happened to me, I promise. I think that you should have admitted it, because I think if you take a 12-year-old to bed, you should admit and say that she's your wife.
Contrary to belief, cults are not limited to religion or a certain type of people. There are psychotherapy cults, New Age cults, self-improvement cults, Eastern meditation cults, even political cults. And if you thought it only happened to other people, crazed people, think again.
I spent about 10.5 years in a political cult that was located in the San Francisco Bay Area. All that it takes is being in a certain vulnerable moment in your life and then coming across someone whose pitch somehow appeals to you.
Marge Boynton knew members of People's Temple. There was the district attorney and the high school teacher.
If you were to meet them, very normal, nice people, educated.
It was just by luck that I didn't get involved in the Branch Davidian and the Branch Davidian movement, and Jennifer was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. It absolutely could have been me or anyone else.
But emerging from obscurity with a plan to shake the world to its foundation are the leaders of these cults. And as we've witnessed, not people who would be ignored.
David Koresh was a superb preacher. I don't think he was, as he claimed, a prophet. He was charismatic. He was one of the most charismatic people around, and people worshipped him.
The reality is that he was an egomaniac. He was perfectly willing to have set up a structure where people were sexually and physically abused. He could spout Bible verses till, you know, the morning come and the next day come and the next day come, and that way sort of mesmerize his followers.
David was a very unique person. I'd like to say that people understand that.
There are lots of mind control techniques used by the leaders, including sleep deprivation, hypnosis against their will, you know, altering somebody's food, cutting them off from their families.
Jim Jones was one of the more controlling, violent, and paranoid of the cult leaders, and his cult was also, some might say, one of the most successful cults.
They thought he was a very dynamic leader. They definitely thought that he was a man of God. One gentleman told me that he thought that Jim Jones was Jesus Christ.
Most cult leaders have some sort of divine magnetism, and really what that means is that they are self-proclaimed messiahs or gurus.
I would suppose that Jim Jones had some divine magnetism.
Most cult leaders have a combination of an authoritarian personality, a certain amount of charisma, and then a character disorder that would be defined as psychopathy, meaning that they just don't operate in the world like the rest of us. They are basically social deviants.
it seems that when we learn about them, there's always some sort of sexual dominance. And Jim Jones, by reputation, certainly had that. He demanded sex from many of them. I've heard that he used sex as a form of blackmail.
I lived 3 miles away. I had no idea that David Koresh was having children with young girls.
One of the best ways to control someone is to control them sexually, because that goes to someone's deepest emotional core.
As far as committing crimes or hurting somebody else, even, abusing children, if they believe that that is what God wants them to do, God meaning the person who's standing right in front of them, they believe it's the right thing to do.
I do believe they had multiple wives. I think that he should have admitted it, because I think if you take a 12-year-old to bed, you should admit and say that she's your wife. I do think they were a little young.
The manipulation is so strong, and the fear of retribution by the cult leader, or the fear of eternal damnation, or whatever it might be that cult leader is trying to get you to believe, is very strong.
Psychologically, you truly believe that you can't go out the door, and that there's no other life outside the cult, and there's no other reality but the cult reality.
And the reality is, at Ranch Apocalyptic, Koresh's surviving followers are waiting for him to return and the world to end.
Well, I don't set dates, but when I see what's going on in the world, when I see how Babylon is increasing to become Great Babylon, then I know it's closer than I thought.
So that's one of the reasons that I'm digging up the tunnels, because if he's going to be resurrected, I want his escape routes to be in clear evidence. Anyone who's built as many escape routes as he did had no intention of dying there. And I just find it impossible to believe that he did.
Whether it is Koresh or some other so-called messiah that ignites the next fire under the sleeping giant we call cults, rest assured, they will possess some kind of magnetism.
Divine magnetism. I think that is perhaps both angelic and satanic. Now, David Koresh certainly had the magnetism. And I'll leave it to you to decide where he's coming from.
Human beings, by nature, are extremely curious. Curiosity is defined as a strong desire to learn about new, strange, or unusual things. No matter how great our knowledge and skill, without curiosity, we would never search beyond our own reality. Isn't that curious? Young Linda could determine if a person was no longer alive just by looking at their image in a photograph.
She could pick out who was dead and tell you what was wrong with someone who was sick.
By the use of an endoscope, we took part in an even stranger expedition, a journey inside a mummy.
From the boundaries of the universe to the depth of your soul, embark on a journey through the unknown and unexplained. Hello and welcome. This is Patrick McNee. Today we'll see how the marvels of science can open the doors to the past. But first, an incredible story. In ancient times, the power to heal the sick was often considered a God-given gift. And in some cultures, those who could restore health were believed to be gods themselves. With the advent of medicine, much of the mystery of this capability was removed. But not all of it. One of the greatest enigmas in the annals of medical history involves a young girl who had the miraculous ability to cure the afflicted simply by touching them. But the irony of her story is that though she could restore others to health, she had no power to heal her own diseased body.
Most nights we would hear voices when she was in her bed. And we'd creep down the passage, everything stopped. What was said, we don't know. Naturally, all we heard was her voice. And then she'd say, "My Jesus Christ came." She told me on a number of occasions Jesus Christ was behind me, or I've passed him. I've been very rude. Didn't say good evening. You've walked past my Jesus Christ. Not said good evening or anything else.
By all accounts, little Linda Martell was an extraordinary child. Though she was born with spina bifida, a disease which disfigured her body and prevented her from walking, Linda achieved mind-boggling feats which to this day draw the curious and the hopeful to her native Guernsey, a quaint island situated in the English Channel. This is where Linda and her family once lived. And it was from this very house that the 5-year-old performed not a few, not dozens, but literally hundreds of miracles.
I first came across Linda and her family in 1960 because I came here to this church. I was told that there was this little girl who lived in the parish and interesting things were happening. So I went along as the parish priest to see what it was all about, and got a nice welcome from the family and went in and saw Linda sitting there, and her mother Eileen and Father Roy explained what was happening, that people were going along and taking their troubles and illnesses to her, and she was in some strange way making them feel better.
What the Reverend soon came to realize was that young Linda could heal the sick with just a touch of her small hand. Linda's mother recalls the day she first suspected there was something special about her daughter.
That happened when my husband came home from work and he had a migraine. He was going to bed. And Linda said, "Come and see me and I'll make it all better." She just touched his head. He went and lay down. But within half an hour he was back. "I'll have my dinner now," he said. "The headache's gone." No more migraines after that.
The relief of Roy's headache might have been written off as mere coincidence. But soon the Martells began to fathom just how real Linda's gift was. Eventually they discovered that not only could she heal people, she could amazingly diagnose ailments as well.
She would just tell somebody to sit down and she would tell them exactly where or what was wrong with them. And she just touched them. "You'll be all better now." And that was it. Now, there's one gentleman came in with a heart complaint. We didn't know what it was. But as soon as he walked in the door, she said, "You suffer with your heart."
From a young lad, I suffered a terrific pain or an uncomfortable feeling that when I was sitting down, I kept on having to move from right to left, or when I lay down or tried to relax, the pain is always there. I went to the London Chest Hospital, they tried everything.
But when traditional means failed, Mr. O'Toole sought out Linda.
When I went there, I was surprised to see a little child, and as I walked in, she said, "You've come to see Linda, and you have a pain." And she pointed to her own self exactly where my pain was, which I had, I said, for years. So she said, "Can Linda touch it?" Which she did. And from then on, I've never had the pain since.
And there were others who were healed. Enda Maillet recounts how the tiny child cured her mother of a lifelong illness.
Well, she was very, very ill. She used to suffer very bad with asthmatic. She couldn't hardly get up the stairs, and when I was younger, I used to go up into her room, she'd be lying on the floor, gasping for breath, and she'd suffered all her life with it since she was 3. One day she was told about little Linda, because we knew the father well, Roy, and she went down to the bungalow, and Linda touched Mother like that, and she said, "You've got bad chest." She said, "It'll be all better now." Well, funny enough, it was. She didn't have those awful attacks anymore. And the strangest thing, which Mother would never do, she went shopping in town, on the high street, and we've got a rather large hill from the high street right up. It's a really big hill. And my mother walked up that hill with a basket of shopping, but she never could do that, never.
But how could such a frail young child have such incredibly powerful abilities? We asked Linda's brothers and sister.
Well, obviously, when Linda was born, her disabilities obviously made her different. You must remember, she spent her first 3 years in hospital. She didn't arrive home till she was over 3 years old.
Too ill to live with her family, Linda was cared for by nurses and nuns at the hospital where she resided. And it was there she learned of Jesus Christ and the woman whom Linda called My Lady.
I think her early upbringing made her a bit of a channel for this purpose, you know, with the upbringing of the nuns and so on, brought her into a religious dimension, and I'm sure that that's the way in which God was able to use her.
Linda always credited Christ as the source of her healing ability.
She always used to say, it's my Jesus Christ. And like she said, it was Jesus Christ. It's not me, it's Jesus Christ.
Linda's talents also included the uncanny ability to determine if a person was no longer alive just by looking at their image in a photograph.
She could pick out who was dead on the picture, on the photograph, and tell you what was wrong with someone that was sick.
And after having diagnosed the illness of a person pictured, Linda was actually able to heal them long distance by means of handkerchiefs she had touched.
She'd pass her hand over a handkerchief and say something. What? It was a foreign language to us. We didn't know what it was. My mother-in-law suggested it was something in Hebrew, but I'd say whether it was or not, I don't know.
The handkerchiefs were sent to whomever asked for them. And when the knowledge of their healing power spread beyond the shores of Guernsey, the Martells were inundated with requests. Roy and Eileen bought handkerchiefs by the dozen and sent them all around the world. Linda, who was never happier than when she was helping others, blossomed, and the Martell household was filled with joy. But sadly, looming just beyond the horizon were dark clouds of sorrow.
When the doctor came, she told me, she says, there's nothing you can do, Dr. Webber. My Jesus will help me.
The Martells never accepted money for Linda's services, but people did give her gifts. Grateful for his healing, Ralph O'Toole presented Linda with a dress.
It was a lovely, you know, special party dress, and her eyes lit up. Then the father said to me, you know, Linda is not a well girl, and he showed me what was wrong with her, and she had something wrong with her spine. And when I seen it, I felt a terrible feeling. I thought, well, what a grown man like myself coming to a little child like this with a pain when this young girl is dying.
Linda herself knew she was going to die long before her parents did. The words she used to predict her death still echo in her mother's ears.
Yes, my Jesus isn't coming anymore. I'm going to see him.
Curiously, as time drew near for Linda to depart this world, she began to gain knowledge about relatives who had long since moved on to the next world.
My father-in-law died in 1953. He had been blind in one eye. Now, Linda wasn't born till 1956. But one day she said, well, my grandpa is fine now, he can see. I said, well, what do you mean he can see? He's got sight, he can use both eyes now. My Jesus Christ has healed him. And I said, she didn't even know, well, she didn't know her grandfather.
Though time was running out, Linda kept up her ministry of healing as her parents held on to the hope that their daughter might somehow receive a miracle of her own.
We did think at one time that she would walk the following year. She started getting pains in her back and her legs. And then she said, well, my Jesus has told me I shall walk next year. Because within 3 months she was dead. The week leading up to it, and she was in quite a bit of pain. I said, well, we better get the doctor. There's no need to get the doctor, there's nothing he can do. And when the doctor came, she told him, she says, there's nothing you can do, Dr. Webber. My Jesus will help me. He said, well, in that case, he said, I'll go back home. She continued with his pains, but what can I say?
On the 20th of October 1961, Linda Martell died. She was 5 years and 2 months old. Her father, Roy, followed in 1979, and her elder brother, Peter, passed away in 1995. In recent years, Linda's grave has become a place of reflection and comfort for those in need.
Always that grave has had flowers on it. It's had people put little bits of cloth or mementos on it, and even photographs of someone they've got in the family, perhaps who's ill, and they want to get some help. It is a little bit, in a way, superstitious, but it seems to work for people. And the Martell family, Eileen, will tell you that they've had all these letters from people requesting souvenirs of Linda and prayers on their behalf.
The requests for souvenirs began shortly after Linda's passing.
Somebody asked for a handkerchief that Linda had touched. We said we had none. And he said, well, you've got a piece of her clothing. And we hadn't thought about that. So from then on, we started cutting up the clothing and sending that out to people that required that little piece of it. I always carry a piece with me.
And these bits of cloth, which Linda came into contact with more than 3 decades ago, are still able to help people today.
I've had my back bad all week with my kidneys because I suffer with my back. And funny enough, I put a little bit of cloth on my back last night when I went to sleep. I felt much better this morning, whether it's my faith, but I felt much better.
We recently caught up with Eileen and 2 of her other children, Kay and Barry, who shared some thoughts about their sister.
Well, I remember an instance where I was asked to go and play with her in the garden, and reluctantly I went, because 8-year-old boys do not want to play with their 3-year-old sister. You know, they want to be out playing football with their mates. But looking back, I mean, it was, it was something to be proud of, you know.
While they're still suffering, people are still suffering, Linda's work will continue.
And as for Eileen Martell, the requests for pieces of Linda's things continue.
I'm cutting up blankets now. I've got with the last blanket. Cutting up now to send out, you know.
Like her divinely touched daughter, Eileen too has a place in her heart for those who suffer. And it is for this reason that she continues to share the wondrous gift of Linda's miraculous touch.
By the use of an endoscope, we took part in an even stranger expedition, a journey inside a mummy.
Through 30 centuries, the great pharaohs ruled Egypt. An obsessive urge for immortality dominated these ancient Egyptians. So much so, they set out to capture the image of pharaohs, queens, and everyday man in timeless capsules. These mummies have preserved important clues for us to find thousands of years later.
DNA reached celebrity status during the O.J. Simpson trial. Doctors and lawyers used this state-of-the-art test to patch intricate clues of a murder mystery together.
All the while, another DNA test was also underway, but this time it was used to unravel the secrets of ancient history. At the Rosicrucian Egyptian Museum, 6 mummies lay patiently waiting to be probed and dissected with the utmost care. Their ages estimated at 3,000 years.
I think that by going back and examining the genetics of people in ancient times, following that history up through time to the present, we'll get an idea of where we're moving, what kind of things are happening to us as a human race. We think that we can tell by the little signatures that we get from their DNA, possibly their origin.
It holds a bizarre fascination to watch the body of a person who had lived thousands of years ago. And by the use of an endoscope, we took part in an even stranger expedition, a journey inside a mummy.
You can see us enter inside, down, through, and there we are inside the mouth.
What you see coming across now is the instrument we use to extract the tooth, go in and loosen it. The tooth has just been pulled out and is being held by the instrument, and then we'll pull that back out across the tongue and out through the mouth.
We're very interested in teeth because teeth are a very good source of DNA.
Mummification was the ancient Egyptians' way of preserving their dead, a ritual which was considered essential for securing an afterlife.
There is a wide range in the type of mummification that went on in ancient Egypt. And the full-blown mummification that we see that may have taken 70 days was reserved for the very rich, the kings, the queens, and the nobles.
And for these kings and queens, decorative tombs were built, places where opulence was the rule, not the exception. At the entrance of one such tomb, the prayer of protection against evil was set in hieroglyphics. Beckett Avila Clem translates.
Or praise to the sun god Re, who rises in the horizon east of heaven. Behold, behold, Khnum Hotep.
And to make this journey to the hereafter a more pleasant one, colorful tales of myths line the walls inside the tomb. At the museum, small tissue samples were taken from the mummies and compared to other mummies in the world to see where they fit in.
We would like to see if we can determine through their genetics and through their genes whether or not they belong to any of those other populations that we've already tested in Egypt.
And if DNA gives the answer to family relations, carbon testing is another process that places a mummy in a definite time period.
This mummy is probably about 3,000 years old. It comes from about the 26th dynasty, which is a later dynasty in Egypt.
And finally, we have a human being staring out at us across 3 millenniums with his own story to tell. Who would have thought that 3,000 years later, the Egyptians' obsession to conquer death and our obsession to conquer technology could give a new life to history?
Stories of the nature of Linda Martell leave us puzzled and amazed. Instead of questioning it, perhaps we should say a simple thank you.